If you're like most of us, you've probably bought into one of the big toxic myths of modern ambition. You know the one. The idea that to be truly successful, you have to sacrifice sleep. You run on espresso, you wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. We all picture the world's top performers just pulling all-nighters glued to their screens in that state of constant, relentless hustle.
And yet the sources you sent over, they tell a completely different story. I mean, it's almost a radical story. We are not just talking about wellness today. We are talking about pure strategy.
Strategy.
For the actual elite performers, we're talking CEOs, world-class athletes, the most prolific creators. Going to bed early isn't a sign of weakness. It's not low commitment. It is, and this is the key, maybe the single most important strategic decision they make every single day.
Okay, so let's really unpack that. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore how protecting your bedtime is, well, an undeniable competitive edge.
Exactly.
It's not about finding a little time for rest. It's about treating lights out like it's a non-negotiable high-stakes meeting on your calendar.
Yeah.
One that, protects the quality of everything else you do the next day.
Whether that's signing a billion-dollar deal or just, having a clear head for your creative work, we need to move the whole conversation from sleep is healthy to sleep is strategic infrastructure.
I like that. Strategic infrastructure.
Yeah. And we're going to look at this across three major spheres. First, the business case decision quality, with leaders like Jeff Bezos and Tim Cook.
Okay.
Second, we'll tackle the culture shift. The whole idea of rejecting what you could call the altar of exhaustion, looking at people like Arianna Huffington and Bill Gates who had these huge reckonings. Finally, we'll get into the extreme discipline of elite performance, physical and cognitive recovery, using the routines of, Tom Brady, LeBron James, and the marathoner Eliud Kipchoge.
That sounds like we're basically tearing up the modern hustle playbook.
We are, and replacing it with one based on clarity and endurance.
Let's start right where the stakes are highest then. Section 1. Bedtime as a decision filter.
What's so fascinating here is how the story we tell about peak performers, it completely misses the most boring but also the most crucial detail.
Their sleep discipline.
It's their sleep discipline. Let's start with Jeff Bezos. When you picture the guy who scaled Amazon into this global monster, you imagine these relentless back-to-back schedules, right? Constant travel, midnight crisis meetings.
I picture exactly that.
Yeah.
I mean, how else do you build a behemoth like that? It has to be round-the-clock attention.
Well, the reality, and this is all documented in the sources, is that Bezos publicly prioritizes a full 8 hours of sleep. He's been really clear about this for years. He said, 8 hours of sleep makes a big difference for me, and I try hard to make that a priority.
So he sees it as fundamental. It's not a luxury he can just cut when things get busy.
Not at all. It's a core part of his long-term success strategy.
Okay, but just, preferring sleep isn't a strategy in itself. What makes the timing of that choice, the early bedtime strategic, and not just, a personal preference?
It's how he uses that boundary, the boundary of sleep, to filter his entire day. He has what the sources call the 10 a.m. rule.
10 a.m. rule.
What's that? He schedules his high IQ meetings, so the mentally heaviest, most complex decisions that require maximum clarity for around 10 a.m.
Right when his brain is firing on all cylinders.
Exactly, and he almost never schedules those big decisions after 5 p.m.
So he's actively admitting that his cognitive horsepower, it dips in the afternoon.
Precisely, and here's the critical part. If a major mentally taxing decision pops up late in the afternoon, say at 4:30, he'll often just defer it. He won't try to power through.
He pushes it.
He pushes it right to the next morning's 10 a.m. slot. He'd rather wait and make a high-quality decision than make a fast, low-quality one when he knows his energy is lower and his judgment might be a little off.
So the key isn't really the meeting itself. It's the invisible decision he made the night before, that early bedtime, to make sure his brain is sharp and ready at exactly 10 a.m. He's choosing mental readiness over immediate response time.
That is the absolute core of the decision filter principle. Most of us, especially in high-pressure jobs, we let sleep absorb the day's leftovers. We decide everything else we want to do, watch one more episode, answer one more email, scroll social media, and then whatever time is left over, that's what we give to sleep. If anything runs late, sleep is what pays the price.
And Bezos just completely flips that script.
Totally. He sets the sleep boundary first. The 8 hours are non-negotiable, and that forces everything else, all the tasks, all the meetings, to fit inside the time that's left.
And he's actually explained the math on this, right? He calls it the illusion of productivity.
Yes, and the economic trade-off is huge. Look at it this way. Cutting your sleep from 8 hours to 4 seems to gain you 4 extra hours of work.
Seems like a win.
But Bezos argues that the cost of just one bad judgment call due to fatigue, say you miscalculate a key acquisition or you make a huge error in a supply chain contract, that one mistake could cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Which would completely dwarf the value of those 4 hours you spent answering emails.
Instantly, it makes the late-night work session look less like commitment and more like a massive, unnecessary risk factor. The cost isn't just your health, it's a real financial liability.
It's just risk management, plain and simple. When you're running systems at that scale, reducing your error rate is way more valuable than just increasing your input hours.
Exactly. Fatigue makes you irritable. It leads to narrow, reactive thinking. It makes you choose the easy path, not the best one. So for Bezos, an early bedtime is just a tool to minimize the risk of catastrophic human error.
And this is where it gets really fascinating because the cognitive science behind this timing aspect, it's not just about how many hours you sleep in total, it's when you sleep.
Absolutely. When we align our sleep with our natural circadian rhythm, our body clock, we optimize everything. Hormone cycles, emotional regulation, it all works better. For leaders, chronic sleep restriction is just devastating. It tanks your attention, it kills your working memory, and critically, it destroys your emotional control.
The exact things you need for high-stakes leadership. Attention, synthesis, patience.
All of it. For example, a consistent early bedtime helps regulate cortisol, the stress hormone. When you're always sleeping late, pulling all-nighters, you're confusing your system. You end up with higher baseline cortisol, which means more anxiety, more snap judgments.
So by sticking to that early bedtime, you're actually protecting your ability to be patient and nuanced, the things someone like Warren Buffett relies on.
Exactly right.
I really love this idea that going to bed early is a form of ambition. It's like you're protecting your brain 10 years from now. And it reframes staying up late from this, harmless little indulgence into actively sabotaging tomorrow's self.
That identity shift is the key. That's the mental lock you need. You stop seeing sleep as time you lose, and you start seeing it as the highest return investment you can possibly make in your own clarity.
Okay, so let's look at other leaders. People who might seem different on the surface, but are actually using the same playbook. Tim Cook at Apple, for instance. He's famous for waking up before 4 a.m. That sounds superhuman.
It sounds like a recipe for burnout, doesn't it? But the sources show that Cook's insane early rise only works because he's in bed so early, often between 9:30 and 10 p.m. He said it himself, the earlier he gets to bed, the better he functions. The hinge isn't the 4 a.m. alarm. It's the 9 p.m. shutdown that makes that 8-hour window even possible.
So he's not cutting corners. He's just shifting his entire day forward. You can't really front-load the morning without backloading the evening.
Exactly right. It's a closed system. And you see this pattern everywhere. Bob Iger at Disney, same thing. He'd wind down early to wake up before dawn. He protected those quiet morning hours for reading and deep thinking.
Which you can only do if you've had a full night's rest.
Right. And then you have Warren Buffett. He's not running a physical marathon or dealing with Amazon's logistics, but his entire edge depends on patience and rational analysis.
Compounded judgment.
Compounded judgment. His whole philosophy is long-term, probabilistic. It requires supreme emotional control, the ability to resist herd mentality, to wait patiently, to assess risk without fear or greed messing with his brain.
All things that sleep protects.
All things that sleep protects. If sleep deprivation kills your impulse control and emotional regulation, it directly attacks the core of his entire business advantage. He values sleep because his billions literally depend on his patience, which is biologically anchored in good rest.
This isn't even a new idea. There's a historical parallel here that shows this structure has been around forever. We have to talk about Benjamin Franklin.
The original productivity guru, absolutely. Franklin is famous for early to bed and early to rise.
Makes man healthy, wealthy, and wise. We all know it.
And his own routine, right there in his autobiography, it reflects that. He'd go to bed around 10 p.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. He was aiming for a solid 7, sometimes 8 hours.
So he built his whole intellectual day around those fixed points. The evening was for reflection, conversation, and then at 10 p.m., a hard stop.
The structure mattered so much. By setting that 10 p.m. cutoff, he was protecting those golden hours in the early morning, the quietest time of day for his deep work. His writing, his planning, his scientific experiments.
So Franklin and Bezos, separated by 250 years, basically landed on the same strategic move.
Exactly. Bedtime isn't an afterthought. It's a protective boundary that guarantees high-quality output on the other side. They both realized that any tiny gain from staying up late is almost always wiped out by the mistakes and poor judgment of the next day.
That makes perfect sense when you look at it through that lens of decision quality. But it brings us to this huge cultural problem, because even with all this evidence, most ambitious people still feel this massive friction when they try to go to bed early. They feel like they're giving up or missing out on something. And that feeling takes us right into section 2, redefining success.
Yeah, we have to talk about the altar of exhaustion. In so many ambitious circles, staying up late, firing off emails at midnight, bragging about running on 4 hours, it's still a status symbol.
A badge of honor.
Arianna Huffington called it the fetish of sleeplessness. This idea that being chronically tired equals commitment. If you leave the office at 5:30 or log off at 9, some part of you worries you're signaling weakness.
And Huffington, I mean, she was at the very center of that world, and she learned the cost of it in a really dramatic way.
The story is just harrowing. It's 2007. Huffington is the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. By all conventional measures, she is winning.
Right.
She's working nonstop, juggling everything, running on fumes. And one day she wakes up on the floor of her home office in a pool of blood. She had collapsed from sheer exhaustion and broken her cheekbone on her desk.
Wow. That is the ultimate catastrophic wake-up call. It's a physical symptom of professional burnout.
It wasn't just an accident, it was a total system failure. The big moment for her wasn't just the pain, it was the realization that her whole definition of success, more hours equals more progress, was just fatally flawed.
And that led to her work with Thrive Global.
Yes. Promoting these serious structural boundaries, no devices in the bedroom, mandatory wind-down routines, and treating sleep as a non-negotiable pillar of success, right up there with diet and exercise.
The core idea being, a version of success that requires you to regularly destroy your sleep is a version not worth keeping.
And that changes everything. Going to bed early stops feeling like you're leaving something on the table and starts feeling like an act of self-preservation and, frankly, an act of career courage.
It's a new definition of hard work.
Exactly. Redefining hard work not as just staying up late, but as saying no. Saying no to things that don't fit in a healthy schedule, logging off when there's more you could do, and being willing to disappoint hustle culture to protect your future self. That's way harder than just answering one more email.
And this cultural battle is not just in media. We see this massive narrative replacement happening in tech, too.
Yeah.
Specifically with Bill Gates, which is fascinating because he was the original icon of the all-nighter.
Oh, he's a spectacular example of this pivot because he spent decades as the poster child for that toxic ideal. In the early Microsoft years, he wore sleep deprivation like a suit of armor. He'd brag about pulling all-nighters.
Right, they'd compete over who could stay up the longest coding.
It was a culture built on chronic exhaustion, the ultimate badge of honor in the startup world.
But then he publicly pivoted.
And his honesty about it is really powerful. In 2019, he admitted that reading Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, forced him to face the actual costs. He said his old habits took a big toll, that they corroded his creativity, his problem-solving, his memory, his health.
So he switched from the default narrative late night is heroic to the replacement narrative. Early, consistent sleep means higher cognitive bandwidth tomorrow.
And greater compound returns over years. It's pure systems thinking. Going to bed earlier raises both your floor and your ceiling. You have fewer mental dips, fewer irritable moments, and you have more aha moments. You learn faster, you remember more.
And sleep loss is the stealth killer of projects. I love that phrase.
It is, because it just dramatically increases all those tiny cumulative errors that silently sink a long-term goal. Gates realized that sacrificing nighttime busyness buys him sharper judgment and a more stable mood the next day, and that is always the higher value trade.
So we've seen the dramatic collapse and the scientific conversion. But what about leaders who modeled these boundaries more quietly, before it was a trend?
Sheryl Sandberg is a great example of this quiet resistance. When she was COO of Facebook, a super high-octane global role, she was famous for drawing a hard line around her evenings.
She'd leave the office around 5:30.
Every day, to be home for her kids. And her routine consistently supported an early bedtime, around 9:30 or 10 p.m.
That's a subtle, but really powerful act of defiance against the 2047 culture that Facebook itself, helped create.
It's crucial modeling. She showed that you can be one of the most powerful executives in the world without glorifying 1 a.m. emails. She chose that early cutoff before her body forced her to. Her success proved that the hustle model is optional, not mandatory.
So the synthesis here is really about redefining hard work. If you define it as just sheer hours, you'll always sacrifice sleep.
Right.
But if you redefine it as the quality of your judgment, sustainable focus, and reducing errors, then early sleep immediately become your most essential tool.
Precisely. It's a nightly vote for a new metric of success. You're defining your ambition not by how much you can endure, but by how much clarity you can produce.
Okay, let's pivot from the boardroom to the field. Because if sleep is strategic for corporate clarity, it is just absolutely non-negotiable for anyone whose performance depends on millimeters, milliseconds, and physical longevity. Let's dive into Section 3, early bedtime as performance insurance.
This is where recovery economics becomes just crystal clear. We can start with Tom Brady. He played quarterback at an elite level until he was 45 years old. I mean, that's a biological anomaly in that sport.
Brady is synonymous with meticulous training, diet, recovery, everything. But he's maybe most famous for his 9 p.m. curfew.
Targeting 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. He credits sleep as the single best recovery tool he has. He prioritizes it over anti-inflammatory meals, over specialized massages, over biofeedback.
It's the first thing on the list.
It's the first thing. For Brady and other elite pros, recovery is the first-order priority that decides what gets cut from the evening. The pro move isn't the fancy supplement, it's the simple choice to be lights out early enough for your body to restore reaction time, optimize impulse control, and consolidate motor learning.
That impulse control is huge. Fourth quarter, Super Bowl, high-stakes meeting. The person who maintains their poise under pressure is the one who wins.
And that poise is absolutely banked the night before. Sleep is when your brain processes and prunes all the complex movements you learned in practice. Without enough sleep, those neural pathways are weaker. That means slower reactions, more errors. A missed block, a bad throw.
And LeBron James is another generational talent who lives by this.
Oh, he's fanatical about it.
Yeah.
James targets 8 to 10 hours of sleep every 24 hours. He calls it the keystone of performance.
8 to 10 hours. Wow.
Yeah. Teammates say he guards his evening routine like a hawk. He makes sure nothing, not social plans, nothing consistently messes with his wind down. That early sleep is what enables him to have the endurance to dominate in the fourth quarter. It is, quite literally, a curfew with a career purpose.
He's investing tonight's time for tomorrow's stamina.
Exactly. And then you have the extreme end of this, Roger Federer.
This detail is just astonishing.
It really drives a point home. Federer, known for his incredible longevity in tennis, reportedly targets an incredible 10 to 12 hours of sleep.
10 to 12. Across nights and naps.
Every day. That shows you how seriously these pros defend their recovery window. For them, sleep isn't about being virtuous. It's performance insurance. That much sleep is the biological price of admission for maintaining the precision and power needed to win championships year after year.
Let's connect this to creative work, too. It's not just physical. Early sleep is critical creative infrastructure.
Absolutely. Take Haruki Murakami, the novelist. His routine is like a metronome. He wakes up at 4 a.m. and he's in bed by 9 p.m. every single night.
So that early lights out is the guardrail that makes the 4 a.m. start sustainable.
And creatively deep. I know we picture artists as these romantic night owls fueled by caffeine, but Murakami is running a factory built on rigorous structure.
And he's protecting the physiology he needs for that work.
Yes. Consistent early sleep consolidates memory, it prunes junk information, and for a novelist, it primes associative thinking, that subconscious connecting of ideas that leads to original prose. If he stayed up late, his mornings would be creatively hollow, he'd have volume, but not quality.
You see this in other precision fields, too, like chess. The smallest mistake costs you the whole game.
Magnus Carlsen, the grandmaster, he treats sleep like a weapon before world championships. Early nights and long sleep protect his calculation speed and, crucially, his emotional regulation for 7 hours of intense focus. Sleep deprivation makes you impatient. In chess, patience is everything.
And gymnastics, Simone Biles.
Yeah.
Absolute precision.
The ultimate precision sport. Biles prioritizes early sleep and naps during heavy training to ensure fewer wobbles, steadier landings. She is literally banking tomorrow's poise tonight. Her early bedtime isn't about being tired, it's about shrinking the error margin for those impossible maneuvers.
And finally, the marathoner Eliud Kipchoge. His life at the training camp in Kapgat seems to be the ultimate expression of this.
It is the ultimate expression of recovery economics. At his high-altitude camp in Kenya, there is a strict, non-negotiable 9 p.m. lights-out rule.
Non-negotiable.
The lesson there is that Kipchoge's success isn't about one heroic race. It's governed by the average quality of hundreds of ordinary, perfectly executed training days. The consistency of recovery is the entire foundation.
And the physiological payoff is massive.
Yet, consistent early sleep catches those crucial growth hormone pulses that happen in deep sleep. That accelerates muscle repair. For a runner, that means better running economy, better pacing, fewer injuries. When you push your bedtime late, you miss the peak window for that restoration. You're basically making your training less effective.
So whether it's Buffett guarding his emotional control, Brady preserving his reaction time, or Kipchoge accelerating tissue repair, the action is always the same.
The early lights out. It's the protective measure that guarantees next day quality. The margin is compounded recovery. If you're 1% sharper, 1% more patient, 1% better recovered every day, that advantage compounds across a career into world-class results.
Okay, so we have covered the why. Why the highest achievers treat bedtime as strategic. Now we got to get practical. You listening might be totally convinced, but how do you actually do this without feeling like you're fighting your own habits every night?
Right.
Let's get into section 4, tools, tactics, and micro steps.
The sources offer some really concrete, actionable steps. And the first one is you have to structure the end of your day with the same seriousness you structure the beginning.
Which means calendar guardrails.
Yes. Treat bedtime like a fixed meeting with tomorrow's you. Pick a lights out time, say 10:30 p.m., and block it off on this calendar. Call it lights out or shutdown sequence. If a late invitation comes up, you treat it like Bezos would treat a late meeting. It's a rare, high-cost exception, not the rule.
That's a great commitment device. And our brains are terrible at making good decisions when we're tired, so we need automation. I love the idea of a reverse alarm.
We use alarms to wake up. We should use them to start winding down. Set an alarm for 60 or 90 minutes before your target bedtime. And don't just label it sleep alarm.
Label it with the why.
Label it with the why. Protect tomorrow's clarity or begin tomorrow's performance now. When it rings, the shift has to be automatic. You go from reactive output, like answering messages, to calming input, like reading or stretching.
But for that to work, you need pre-decisions. If you wait for the alarm to ring to decide what to do, you've already lost.
You've already lost. The pre-decision is the secret weapon. You have to declare a no more decisions time. After that, anything significant gets parked until the morning, and then decide your last meaningful action an hour before bed. Maybe it's reading a chapter, maybe it's planning tomorrow's top 3 tasks, but you have to commit to stopping all the low-value quick checks after that point.
The 2-step shutdown ritual sounds perfect for anyone whose mind is still racing when they get into bed.
That racing mind is your brain still running work applications. The shutdown ritual is designed to close those loops. Step 1 is the brain dump. Get all the tasks, worries, ideas out of your head and onto paper for tomorrow.
Don't solve them, just capture them.
Just capture them. Step 2 is the physical power down. Actually turn off all the devices and leave your work area. Your mind rests better when what's next has a box to live in.
Okay, beyond timing, we have to create a sanctuary, a ritual. And what's the single most popular move among all these high performers?
The tech-free zone. Charging your phone outside the bedroom is the single most common, highest impact move. Huffington, Brady, Cook, they all recommend it. If you can't get it out of the room, move it across the room and switch it to Do Not Disturb an hour before bed. You have to decouple screens and beds.
And the wind-down stack. Murakami and Brady both rely on this kind of consistency. It becomes a Pavlovian cue.
You need a simple, repeatable a tunnel that cues the brain. It could be 20 minutes of light stretching, a hot shower, and then 20 minutes with a paper book. Repetition turns these actions into a signal that tells your nervous system the workday is over, recovery starts now.
I also love the idea of staging the morning. It's a great way to leverage your future self.
The tomorrow's kit ritual. Lay out your clothes, your gym gear, write your first task on a sticky note and put it by your keys. If you reduce morning friction, you're more motivated to cut things off at night because you know the morning will be easier and more productive.
And we should also stress that you need to measure the win. This isn't about being morally superior, it's about performance data.
Exactly. Audit yourself for a week or two. Track your lights out time, then track your next day quality, your focus, your mood, your accuracy. Only keep the routines that actually correlate with your best days. It takes the virtue out of it and just makes it pure optimization.
And to raise the emotional stakes, name your why.
Yes. Write down one specific success outcome you deeply care about. Patience with your kids, hitting a growth target, and then label your bedtime as protecting X. Skipping sleep then feels like you're directly risking something you truly care about.
This is all fantastic, practical advice. But let's be real. That whole structure, the 9 p.m. hard stop, the 4 a.m. wake up, that requires a level of control over your life that many people just don't have. What about the real-world friction? This takes us to Section 5, Counterpoints and Ethical Constraints.
This is a really critical section because the instruction to just go to bed earlier can sound so glib if you're a shift worker or a caregiver for a newborn or a doctor on call. We have to acknowledge that not everyone has the privilege to engineer a perfect Bezos-style schedule.
That is a crucial point. So if perfection is impossible because of your job or your family, what's the new goal?
The point is not that everyone has to be in bed by 9:20. The core principle is you have to stop treating sleep as the first thing you steal from. You protect whatever window you can control.
Okay, so let's talk about strategies for constrained lives. If your reality is chaos, how do you apply this?
You shrink the principle. You aim for better, not perfect. If you work volatile shifts, you focus on protecting anchor sleep, a block of maybe 4 to 5 hours that happens at roughly the same time every 24 hours. That anchor helps stabilize your deep sleep cycles, even if the rest is erratic.
That's practical. Instead of trying to hit 8 hours, you focus on consistently hitting your minimum restorative window.
Yes. Or if you're a caregiver who's up and down all night, you focus on protecting anchor windows. So you protect a consistent 30 minutes of tech-free wind-down time before your first sleep attempt, even if you know you'll be interrupted. You're still cueing the brain to relax.
What about people with chronic insomnia or night anxiety? Forcing an earlier bedtime can just make the frustration worse.
It absolutely can backfire. You end up lying there wide awake, worrying, and reinforcing that negative association between your bed and being awake. In that scenario, the goal is to seek professional support, specifically something called CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
And what's the priority with that approach?
It's about quality and efficiency, not just total time in bed. So the most important strategy is often keeping a very consistent, fixed wake time, no matter how badly you slept. That stabilizes your body clock. The focus shifts from controlling the uncontrollable when you fall asleep to controlling the controllable, which is when you get up.
That's a fundamentally different strategy then. It recognizes a different biological reality.
Exactly. For someone with insomnia, the strategic move is often to delay bedtime until they feel genuinely sleepy, to maximize sleep efficiency. So the advice has to be customized.
And finally, those ethical guardrails. They're so important, especially for people in leadership.
We have to avoid using this success hack as a way to silently judge people whose lives are less controllable. A nurse on shifts or a parent with 3 jobs doesn't need a lecture on Roger Federer's 12 hours of sleep. They need systemic support.
And leaders have to model this. Stop rewarding late-night visibility.
Right. Stop sending 11 p.m. emails that create an expectation that your team should be online. Leaders have to refuse to build cultures that penalize rest. A company built on chronic sleep debt is a house with hidden rot. It leads to burnout, turnover, and costly errors. Clarity, not exhaustion, has to be the metric.
What a powerful deep dive. We've seen that the highest achievers in every field treat their bedtime not as an afterthought, but as strategic infrastructure. It's the nightly guarantee of tomorrow's cognitive edge.
And whether you call it a decision filter like Bezos, a narrative replacement like Gates, recovery economics like Kipchoge and Brady, or creative infrastructure like Murakami, the action is always the same. Shut down to create. You turn the lights out early to proactively turn on tomorrow's edge.
If your success story, as it's currently written, doesn't leave room for early sleep, it's time to rewrite the story. That feels like the perfect snap-close maxim for this deep dive.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. We focus a lot on the input, the action of going to bed early. But the real high-value challenge for you tonight is to figure out what low-stakes, low-return activities you're currently do between 9 p.m. and midnight that you will proudly refuse to do tomorrow.
That proud refusal.
That choice, that proud refusal to accept the crumbs of late-night stimulation, that's where the competitive edge really begins.